Hello everyone, welcome to Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services. It's a video on daily news and editorial analysis, which I'll be covering from the Hindu and Indian Express. The important news and editorial that would be relevant for the preparation of civil services examination will be discussed in this session. Let's get started with the news topic list. Today is 19th of July. The first important news, that is the India and UAE deal to trade with rupees. This is something that both countries will be trading in the domestic currency. We'll see and understand this news. This has been reported in text and context page of the Hindu, although I have also made a discussion to yesterday's session. But in this session, in this topic, I'll make you understand some of the relevant part or perspective that is important for the examination. Second, that is India report a record DPT3 immunization coverage. We'll see the detail about this as well. Third, that is India-France will develop new generation military equipments. Second last, that is multi-development bank efforts to tackle poverty. And the last is an editorial, a push for GM mustard disgracing science and the law. Apart from the news and editorial discussion, at the end of this video, there will be MCQ based questions. These questions will be based on current affairs that will help you for the upcoming prelims examination. So without any further ado, let's get started. And before I begin this session, those of you who are new to our channel, do not forget to subscribe Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services on YouTube. If you like this video, if you find this video informative and helpful, do hit that like button. Starting the session, the first news, that is the India-UAE deal to trade with rupees, something important for General Studies Paper 2. That is the effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest and India's diaspora. So during the recent Prime Minister of India's visit to UAE, there were some of MOUs that were signed between India and UAE. And this is basically an MOU between the Reserve Bank of India, that is RBI, and the Central Bank of UAE. They have signed a memorandum of understanding to have a further trade in the domestic currencies. So while the first establishment of framework to promote the use of local currency is something which is important, will even call for the appreciation of the part. So local currency for the cross-border transactions and other was linked to the payment system both between India, right, and UAE. So this is again important in the mains. You can be asked like the localization of currency for India is how much important and how vital role it can play. तो आप वहाँ पे इस तरह के examples जो country के साथ recent हुई हैं उसे quote कर पाएंगे. So the main aim between the part of the agreement that was done between the India and UAE call for the promotions of local currency. As I've told you, India is looking forward for many other countries to go for the part of trading the local currencies. So the first two MOUs that were signed between India and UAE call for a local currency settlement system, better known as LCSS, to promote the use of rupee and dirham bilaterally. Dirham is a currency for UAE, and in India we have INR, that is Indian rupee. Now this will cover the current and permitted capital account transition between both countries. And as per the regulations and directive by the Reserve Bank of India, which is an apex backed for the country, this will enable the export part and even import. It will send the invoice and pay the amount in respective currencies, which in turn will help the development of INR and AED, that is dinar, for the foreign currency exchange market. It will also help to promote the part of investment and remittances that is there between two countries. If you look at the part of the remittances that India received from the Gulf countries, it is always on the higher side. And the World Bank has noted in its report, the report titled The Migration and Development Brief for India, it says that there's a 24% increase in the remittances, which is like close to $111 billion. And this particular amount represents 3.3% of GDP. So India is a country which receives highest remittances among the other countries in the world. And the point to be noted that Gulf countries and specifically the part of the region have the highest contribution, and the state in India that received the highest remittances is Kerala. So you must be aware of some of the basic facts essentially relevant on the part of remittances, migrations for India. Now interlinking of the payment systems की अगर बात करें, जो दूसरी agreement हुई है on the MOU that was signed to ink the unified payment interface, which is known as UPI. If you look at the part during the COVID-19 and post-COVID, we have seen that the transition for the UPI in India is on a higher side, and India has become a country which has used the maximum number of UPI transactions, right? Even it is so convenient for the platform like that is mostly used in India, like Google Pay, Phone Pay, Amazon Pay. So these are some of the part that is being used as an UPI. And between India and UAE, this will be something that will be called for the instant payment platform, better known as IPP. Now this alongside will call for a card switch, that is between India and UAE. For India, we'll have RuPay switch, and for UAE, this will be known as UAE switch, right? These cards will entail for facilitating the part of communications and transitions between the payment services and the provider. The agreement will also explore linking the payment messaging system of the two countries. Now, how this will be significant for exporter, जो localization currency की बात की गई है, उसमें exporters का कैसे benefits होगा? This is again a point to be noted. So the focus on denominating the part of export contract and invoice for the local currency will help in the part of exchange rate risk, which will further facilitate the scope for discovery of competitive pricing, a pricing which is sustainable and even helping out for the vendors as well. The major item for the export की अगर बात करें specifically from India to UAE, this include the part of mineral fuel, mineral oils, products, bituminous substances, mineral wax followed by pearls, precious stone, metal, electronic machineries, equipment and other items. और कुछ ऐसे items that is imported by India are the petroleum crude, petroleum products. These are the product which is mostly imported by India. And India and UAE, the trade has rose up to $85 billion in 2022. If you're writing a part of the relationship between India and UAE, specifically in the PSIR optional paper, तो वहाँ पे आपको जो numbers हैं वो भी quote करने पड़ेंगे. This will show the part of the diligence that you are appearing with the answer, right? So UAE has a third largest trading partner and the second largest export destination for the financial year 2022 and 23. Now moving ahead with other news, that is India reports a record DPT3 immunization coverage, something important for general studies paper 2, that is the issues related to development and management of health. So this number has taken a toll up to 93%, which is significantly higher compared to the pre-COVID levels. So according to the latest report by the World Health Organization, and apart from this, one other organization, that is UNICEF, they have come up with a combined report, and the report quoted that India has surpassed the pre-pandemic record for the childhood immunization program or coverage. Before COVID also, government has put it its best possible impetus to ensure the part that the immunization coverage in India is on a higher side, and it should be a holistic coverage covering both the part of rural as well as the urban India. Now, as per the report, the coverage rate for the third dose of the diphtheria, tetanus and pertussis, that is DP3, it is commonly known as DTP3. इंडिया में ऑल टाइम नंबर्स हाई रिपोर्ट की गई हैं. दिस इज 93%. दिस इज द पार्ट ऑफ द कवरेज आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट, राइट? सो दिस हैज सरपास द प्री पैंडेमिक लेवल विद 91% रिकॉर्ड इन 2019 and also marking a sharp increase from 85% record in 2021. Now about the DPT vaccines, which are the part which is considered or which is there in this vaccine categories. So DPT is a class of the combination of vaccines against 3 infectious disease in human, that is diphtheria, pertussis and tetanus. So these vaccines are administered to child in 3 doses for a children below 7 years of age. And the coverage of this vaccine is often used to assess how well the countries are doing in providing the routine immunization services to children. ना फाइंडिंग ऑफ द रिपोर्ट, अगर बेसिकली पूरे रिपोर्ट्स की बात करें जो WHO और यूनिसेफ ने दी हैं, उसके कुछ एस्टिमेशन से ये पता चला है. And the report title was National Immunization Coverage, that shows that WHO Southeast region has a coverage for the DPT, which cover for the pre-pandemic level, that is 91%, a sharp increase from 82%, which was recorded in 2021. This is basically pre-COVID number. Now the toll has taken, and at present we are at 91%, which is again on the highest. Now, the region has also witnessed 6% improvement in the total coverage of measles vaccines, rising up to 92% and 86%, which was there in 2021. So you can see the difference and increase. The report also found that there's a gain in attributions and improvement for the immunization. और कुछ countries की अगर बात करें, specifically India और Indonesia ने इस चीज में काफी अच्छी परफॉर्मेंस दी है, and even mark the slower recovery, stagnations on the decline witnesses in the majority of low and middle income countries. About 104 countries have achieved 90% of the coverage in the DPT-3 vaccines. Now, कुछ other vaccines की अगर बात करें इस report में, the report has revealed that 14% of the girls were fully protected against the human papilloma virus. This virus is something which is very dangerous, specifically common in women, and this has resulted in death of lot of the women. So globally इस numbers की अगर percentage में बात करें, only 14% आते हैं. And HPV is a viral infection that can lead to cervical cancer in women. The report also noted that there has been slow recovery in the measles vaccines coverages. Global coverage की अगर बात करें measles की, this is 83% for 2022 and up to 2% point for 2021. The current level is lower than 86% in the coverage, and the herd immunity threshold for the measles is 95%. So these are some of the data-driven facts. If you want, you can learn it out. अगर आप से data की, if you're not able to recall that part, you should know which all diseases have been performing well और कहाँ पे data किस समय performance जो है vaccines के through help हुई. Another news, that is India, France will develop a new generation military equipment, something important for general studies paper 2, that is the effect and policies of developed and developing countries on India's interest and India's diaspora. So India and France have agreed for new generation military equipments as a part of long-term roadmap. Recently, the Prime Minister of India had made a visit to France, और उस मीटिंग में बहुत सारी कमिटमेंट हुई हैं स्ट्रैटेजिक पार्टनरशिप को लेकर के. Specifically, the focus was there on the defense sector, and prior to that also, India has made some of the agreement and MOUs that I'll discuss in a while. Now, both sides has unveiled India and France Indo-Pacific roadmap, boosting the cooperations in the part of the region. Indo-Pacific in general is very important and a significant part of strategy for India. So when it comes to France and even for the Quad countries and AUKUS, India has been actively looking for the part of Indo-Pacific roadmap, which should provide neutrality for each and every member countries. Now, defense deals की अगर बात करें, इससे पहले Defense Acquisition Council, which is an apex body in the India, which is headed by the Defense Minister, has recently approved the part of purchase for 26 Rafale. These Rafale are the naval variant. Rafale is a part which is manufactured by Dassault Aviation of France. तो इन्होंने basically naval variant के लिए 26 Rafale की agreement की है, and 3 sub-Scorpion submarine which will be there from France itself. Both countries are working on a roadmap to produce next generation military equipments and technologies. Nuclear power projects की अगर बात करें, how the things are working out, India and France deal on the 1650 megawatt, that is 10650 megawatt nuclear power plant in the Jaipur, Maharashtra has also made a significant progress. Both sides are engaged in talks to resolve all issues, including and those related to the civil nuclear liability, cost, and techno-commercial matter. Right? So there are a lot of agreements which goes beat from defense to the nuclear power projects. Now, moving to the other news, that is Multilateral Development Bank's efforts to tackle poverty, something important for general studies paper 2, that is bilateral regional grouping and agreement involving India and affecting India's interest. Now, there was a meeting which undertook by the G20 expert group, and this meeting called for strengthening the Multilateral Development Bank. This is learned to have a recommended Multilateral Development Bank to adopt a triple mandate to address the part of extreme poverty, called for inclusive growth and financing the global public goods, along with the suggestions that aims to constitute the global challenges funding mechanism for the global public good. Right. So this is how basically the meeting was there, and this called for a broader roadmap on the part for the development of the multi-development banks. रोड मैप की अगर बात करें मल्टी डेवलपमेंट बैंक की, तो ये जो मीटिंग हुई उसके जो कन्वीनर थे एन.के. सिंह, ही इज ऑल्सो द chairman of the part of the finance commissions, right? So in his remark, he said that the G20 finance minister and the central bank meeting in Gandhinagar supported the estimate that the discussion was there for the additional spending of 3 trillion per year at the part of MDB by 2030. This was a major part of the roadmap that was decided, out of which two-third of the amount will come from domestic resources and mobilizations. The group is learned to have support the part of capital increase, which will increase the official financing expected to split the part between the concessional and non-concessional fund. MDB should be preferred institutions, expanding 90 billion per year for the concessional finance and 300 billion in the non-concessional yieldings. Now G20 expert group on strengthening the multilateral development banks की अगर बात करें, under the aegis of India's G20 presidency, basically India ने pitch की है strengthening the part of multilateral bank, and even in the mains examination you can expect a question related to this, where they can ask like what is the part of the status of multilateral development bank and how India's role as a G20 member has helped, right? तो आपको वहाँ पे ये सारे points mention करने पड़ेंगे. ऑब्जेक्टिव की अगर बात करें एक्सपर्ट ग्रुप की, एक इवैल्यूएशंस की बात की गई है विच कॉल फॉर द स्केल ऑफ फंडिंग एंड इवन फॉर पार्ट ऑफ एड्रेसिंग द financial need for the SDG, trans-border challenges, taken into account for the part of additional capacity, and the CAF recommendations there for the important resources such as private sector and public sector funds. Apart from this, mechanism and coordinating the part of MDBs to help address the finance and the global development and other challenges more effectively. So G20 expert group in a longer run had set certain targets and also had come up with the plan with the aims to strengthen the part of multilateral development banks. Now moving to the editorial of the day, a push for the GM mustard disagreeing science and the laws, something important for general studies paper 3, that is conservation, environmental pollutions, degradation and EIA. And also you can relate this particular topic in general studies paper 2, where government policies and its part of development is mentioned in the syllabus. So what I'll be discussing under this editorial, and what is the theme? The theme and the focus of this article is about the GM mustard and challenges. We'll look into the part of the GM crop in India, the convergence and its risk assessment, misleading the code, some concern, and the conclusion part. So there is a determined battle by the environmentalists in the Supreme Court of India against the Delhi University genetically modified or herbicide tolerant mustard in all that stand between the GM food and Indian farmer and the consumer, right? So there are some tweaks that was done by the Delhi University genetically modified herbicide tolerant mustard, which is not in the favor and even sustainability for the environment. See, there are two counter opinion which is coming. The professors are of the opinion that this is on a viable side, but even the part of the Indian farmers feel that this is something which will be not viable in the longer run. So a debate has emerged. We'll look into the important aspect and burst out the myths which is ongoing. The GM crops are quite different from the conventional varieties and hybrid, such as that developed by the farmers, Agriculture Research Institute and the companies. This is what they have categorically noted. Now GM crops in India की अगर बात करें और इसके related जो debate है, as it has been seen that the robust debate has emerged with regards to GM crop in the last 2 decades. For environmentalists, scientists, politicians, farmers, consumer, they have a higher judiciary. They have asked about the part of the safety, efficacy, and even the very necessity of the GM food. See, for the part of genetically modified foods, this is an evidential fact that definitely there's a tweak in the genes, and something which is coming naturally is impacted. So we cannot deny that fact. There's no tweaking done in the part of the genes, right? Many of them also been alarmed by the expert with regards to BT cotton. BT cotton की अगर बात करें, ये first genetically modified crops हैं जो कि इंडिया में actually approved की गई हैं और use की गई. The long-term research suggests that the BT cotton has provided only fencing benefits to farmer, and while enormously increases the cost of cultivation and risk. Now, if you want to read more about the part of DMH, this was actually approved by the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Council, और basically इन्होंने approve किया था इस particular variant को. If you want to read more, you can read here the Dhara mustard, which was developed by DUX Vice Chancellor Deepak Pantel in 2007. The more details are mentioned over here, so you can read out this, or either you can take the screenshot for better references. Now, converges in the risk assessments की अगर बात करें, the work across the interval for the 5 year, 2 commitments or 2 committees ने unanimously अपनी बात रखी है. This called for the outmest and even called for releasing the part of the GM foods. तो उसके क्या repercussions है, positive and negative, has also been discussed. But you, as a part of aspirant, when you're writing an exam, you need to also provide a remedial option to this, right? So the Committee on Science and Technology and Environment Forest, they have made specific reference to GM mustard and asked the government to conduct a thorough, independent and transparent assessment for the long-term biosafety, environment risk and socio-economic impact. तो ये कहीं ना कहीं एक न्यूट्रल व्यू है और एक कंक्लूसिव और रेमेडियल ऑप्शंस हैं इस तरह के प्रॉब्लम्स के लिए. Now, misleading the court, this was the point that was highlighted in this article. So the recent hearing in the Honorable Supreme Court have get around the part of growing evidence in the long-term ecological and health risk herbicide tolerant crop, जहाँ पे government ने argue किया that GM mustard should not be considered as HT at all, since the objective of developing was to improve the yield. This is the government stand. ये गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के स्टैंड है सुप्रीम कोर्ट में. But government argue that there's nothing but the red herring design perhaps confusing the Supreme Court. So the wisdom is there within the Supreme Court to decide upon whether they will allow it or not. And it will be shocking if the scientists involved in the development of GM mustard will go along with the misleading the court and the public to a larger extent. Now some concern biologists ने जो genes की insertion की जाती है basically GM crops में, there is a tweaking which is take place in the DNA part. They have raised concern for that. The insertion makes the GM crop express trait in the ordinarily that is not done in the natural practices. For instances, GM mustard की अगर बात करें, they have been altered to withstand the part of broad spectrum and even painkiller or herbicide जो glucophosphonate होती है उसको लेकर. This made the part of development hybrid seeds with the higher yield, but as a part of growing GM mustard can spray the herbicides and kill all plant except the mustard. तो सिर्फ और सिर्फ मस्टर्ड इंटेंसिव फार्मिंग के लिए फार्मर्स की जहाँ तक अगर बात करें प्रॉफिट शेयरिंग की वो कम हो सकती है. सो दे आर लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड फॉर 2 or 3 varieties in a season so that they can make a substantial profit out of it. Now to conclude the part, the Indian farmer have witnessed a disaster that was caused by the BT cotton. This was a success, the first crop that was incorporated in India. But the success rate, the part of the livelihood option, the feasibility for the farmers was not that great, right? So they protested along the consumer and scientists against the part of the environmental release of the GM mustard. So ये दूसरी ऐसी चीज़ें होंगी जो कि वापस से बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉफिटेबल ना हो, और जो पास्ट एक्सपीरियंस है वो भी काफ़ी हद तक नेगेटिव है, right? So in the wake-up call there for the government to impose a moratorium for the part of the release of the GMOs, गवर्नमेंट सैम्पल्स में इसे पहले अलाउ करे, देखे कि क्या प्रॉफिट्स एक्चुअल में है, देन फाइनली अप्रूवल कैन बी गिवन फॉर द होल यूजर. इफ इट इज without considering the fact, without considering the case studies, if it is done, it will be detrimental for environment and as well for the farmers. The future farming of the Indian culture and heritage need to be balanced out, and there's a need for the part of constitutional issues involved in the public health, environmental protections, agriculture, livelihoods. Government is discouraging the part of facts, logic before the Honorable Supreme Court. Now, this is up to court to take into the matter, consider the fact, or either come up with the expert committee who will be looking into the part of the GM mustard progress and its consequences and detrimental to the part of environment, and even to a larger extent, it should understand the viability for the farmers as well. So this is how you can conclude your answers. Moving ahead with the MCQ questions of the day, before I proceed, just to tell you the answers of yesterday's questions. For first question, the correct option was A. For second question, the correct option was C. Today's MCQ for practice, it's about the part of sickle cell diseases. The union government in the union budget has also come up with some emphasis and focus on the sickle cell. So this become important. ये मैंने आपके लिए कुछ साइंटिफिक और साइंस बायोलॉजी के एंगल से क्वेश्चन पूछे हुए. This disease is a group of disorder that affects hemoglobin. Sickle cell disease are caused by the sickening of white blood cells. So do check out for the correct options. Second is about the Artemis 1 mission. It was crewed missions for NASA. It aims to build a performance for human presence on the moon. So practicing a lot more current affair question will definitely give you clarity and edge over the part of the real examination. If you have any other concern, any queries about the part of the courses, admissions, part of the test series, you can reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to assist you. For time being, I'm signing off. Thank you so much for watching this video.